Chapter 1. Evening descended slowly upon the small village on the edge of the forest. The last rays of sunlight stretched out like a sheet of golden silk, falling upon moss-covered rooftops and uneven dirt paths still speckled with mud from yesterday's rain. The wind whispered through the old oak trees, scattering dry leaves and creating a soft, murmuring melody of nature. In the distance, church bells tolled a somber tune, blending with the chirping of crickets, making the scene feel both peaceful and tinged with an indescribable melancholy. Amidst the golden glow of dusk, a small figure moved quietly along a weathered wooden fence. It was a cat, so thin that its bones showed beneath its tangled fur, as if it had been wandering for days without finding a place to rest. Its eyes, bright, glimmering blue, stood out in an almost haunting way, as though they held a story no one had ever heard. Each step it took was slow and cautious, yet beneath that silence lingered a sense of purpose, as if it were searching for something only it understood. The villagers had grown used to the sight of this cat. They called it the little ghost, a masterless wanderer that appeared only when the sun was about to set, then vanished again into the night. To them, it was just another stray, surviving on scraps left behind kitchens or the fleeting kindness of strangers. But no one noticed that every time it appeared, its gaze was fixed on one particular place, a rundown house on the edge of the forest. Its windows dark for many years until this summer. That day, the breeze carried the scent of damp earth and fresh grass. The cat stopped before the faded wooden gate, watching silently. In the yard, a young woman stepped out onto the porch. Her long, chestnut-colored hair lifted gently in the wind, framing a delicate face shadowed with quiet exhaustion. Her name was Emily, the newcomer to the village, now living with her grandmother in a house that had stood abandoned for years. And in that fleeting moment, when the cat's brilliant blue eyes met the girl's weary ones, it felt as if an invisible thread tightened between two distant souls. The cat let out a soft sound, not quite a hungry meow, not quite a cry for help. It was more like a whisper, as though it was trying to tell her something important, something no one else would listen to. It took a few tentative steps toward the fence, then retreated when Emily moved closer, leaving her standing there with a strange mix of curiosity and unease. From that day forward, Emily's sunsets were no longer the same. Each evening, the cat returned, silently watching her, its blue eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The small, quiet village, once seemingly tranquil, now felt shrouded in mystery. No one could explain why a stray cat would fixate on a stranger so persistently, and even fewer could imagine that those small, careful paw steps were leading Emily toward a secret buried for decades, a story the forest had guarded in silence, waiting only for the right person to finally uncover it. Chapter 2. On the very first day Emily set foot in her grandmother's house, she had already heard whispers about a stray cat that often lingered near the fence. But when she finally saw it with her own eyes, what surprised her the most was not its thin, scruffy appearance. It was those eyes, bright, deep, and so sorrowful that she felt as if she were staring into the soul of something long abandoned. Every evening, as the sunset filtered through the trees, the cat would sit there, perfectly still, like a living statue, watching her with an unexplainable gaze. Emily was not someone who could ignore a creature in need, yet every time she approached softly, the cat would leap back, darting into the bushes or disappearing toward the forest's edge, only to return the next day to the very same spot. Its persistent presence left Emily wondering, was it simply searching for food? Or was it looking for something else? One evening, she left a piece of fish by the fence, but by morning it was untouched, with only tiny paw prints pressed into the damp soil, evidence of a hesitant visitor who came close, lingered, and walked away. As the days passed, Emily began to feel an invisible thread binding her to the stray. Each morning when she woke up, she found herself glancing out the window, hoping to see it there. Every late afternoon, as the wind rustled through the trees, she often spotted that small figure sitting silently, its eyes shining like lonely stars against the fading light. Deep down, Emily knew the cat wasn't coming just for a meal. It was waiting for something, waiting for her, or for a moment it barely dared to believe would ever come. One summer evening, storm clouds rolled in, followed by a sudden, heavy downpour. The wind whipped fiercely against the metal roofing, making it rattle and groan. while trees bent and swayed as if they might be uprooted. Amidst the pounding rain, Emily heard a faint, trembling meow outside the porch. When she opened the door, her heart clenched at the sight before her. The frail cat lay curled up at the bottom of the steps, soaked to the bone, shivering, and one of its hind legs smeared with dark, wet blood. Without hesitation, Emily scooped it up, the fragile warmth of its body and the faint beat of its heart making her forget any fear of claws or teeth. The door closed behind her, and from that instant, both of their lives began to change. Under the soft glow of the kitchen's old yellow light, Emily placed the cat gently on a dry towel. It let out a weak sound, its bright eyes clouded with pain. Carefully, she wiped away the mud, examined the injury, and fetched her grandmother's first aid kit. While tending to the wound, her fingers froze for a moment as they brushed against a strange scar circling the cat's neck, a faint, uneven mark, as if it had once been trapped in a tight cord or worn something too tight for far too long. A shiver ran through Emily. This wasn't just another stray. It had once belonged to someone and had endured something terrible to bear such a mark. When the wound was cleaned and wrapped, Emily placed a small bowl of warm milk beside it. The cat stared at her for a long while, its blue eyes glistening as though trying to speak, before lowering its head to take careful, tiny sips. In that quiet moment, Emily felt something shift deep inside her. The new bond had been forged, not just the pity between human and animal, but a silent vow. She would never let this fragile little creature face the world alone again. That night, the rain outside faded to a soft drizzle, replaced by the steady rhythm of the cat's breathing as it curled up near the fireplace. Emily sat silently, watching the firelight dance in those tired blue eyes, and wondered, how far had it traveled? How much pain had it endured to end up wandering here? And more importantly, why her? Why this house? This moment? This connection? As if the cat were pleading for her to follow a trail that no one else dared to take. Chapter 3. In the days following that rainy night, the cat began to trust Emily more. It no longer ran away whenever she approached. Sometimes, it even lay by the window, quietly watching her as she moved through the old house. Emily gave it a temporary name, Little One, yet even as she said it, something about the name felt incomplete. This cat carried a story far too heavy to be contained in just two simple words. The wound on its leg healed gradually. Each evening, Emily patiently untangled the knots in its messy fur, slowly restoring its original softness. But in its eyes, there was still a flicker of unease, as though it was waiting, as though it had not yet reached where it truly wanted to go. Every now and then, while they sat together in silence, it would paw gently at Emily's sleeve, let out a long, low meow, then dart to the door and look back at her. The first few times, Emily thought it just wanted to play outside, but as the gesture repeated, as those blue eyes gazed at her with what looked like a plea, she began to understand the cat was trying to lead her somewhere. One early morning, with mist still blanketing the narrow path behind the garden, the cat meowed insistently, scratching softly at the back door. Emily slipped on a cardigan and followed. Despite a slight limp from its not yet healed injury, the cat moved swiftly, weaving through wild grass, circling the rotting wooden fence, and slipping into the thick forest behind the house, a place Emily had never dared venture since moving here. Dim light filtered through the tall canopy above, casting shadows over a ground thick with decaying leaves and the heavy scent of damp earth. Emily walked cautiously, her heart pounding, not knowing whether it was fear or the strange sense of being drawn into a story that had been sleeping for decades. The cat never looked back, stopping only now and then to wait for her, its blue eyes glowing like tiny flames in the morning fog. After nearly 20 minutes of winding through the woods, they came to a small clearing, encircled by towering, moss-covered trees standing like silent witnesses of time. The cat moved toward one corner of the clearing and began furiously scratching at the pile of dry leaves and soft earth. The sound of claws tearing at the ground was relentless, carrying an urgency that made Emily's breath hitch. Kneeling beside it, she dug with her bare hands, her palms soon covered in mud and rotting foliage. A faint clink sounded when her nails struck something solid. Emily inhaled sharply and brushed away the damp soil. There, beneath the earth, lay a small stone marker, almost entirely swallowed by moss and age. She wiped it clean with her sleeve, And as the engraved words emerged, her eyes widened, a cold shiver racing down her spine. For Lucy, my little angel. In that moment, the forest seemed to fall silent. A somber weight settled over the clearing, fake and suffocating, as if the breath of an unrested soul lingered in the air. Emily placed her hand on the weathered stone, the chill seeping straight into her chest. Beside her, the cat let out a mournful sound, no longer the cry of a stray but a low, anguished wail, like grief that had been trapped for years. Finally slipping out, 1,000 questions flashed through Emily's mind. Who was Lucy? Why was the grave of a child left forgotten, hidden deep in the forest? And why had the cat brought her here, as though it was bound to this tragedy? A piece of the sorrow carved into this earth? Goosebumps prickled her arms, and for an instant, she felt eyes watching from the trees above, witnesses to this revelation yet unable to speak. Emily gathered the trembling cat into her arms, feeling its heartbeat racing against her chest. No words were exchanged, but she understood something with a piercing clarity. The secret had not found her by accident. And now that it had surfaced, there was no turning away. Chapter 4. Ever since the day she found the grave, Emily had not slept peacefully. The image of that moss-covered stone, with the faint words, "For Lucy, my little angel," etched upon it, haunted her like a half-waking dream. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cat sitting by the little grave, its deep blue eyes brimming with unspeakable sorrow. Like a guardian of a memory the world had long forgotten, Emily knew this story was far from over. She needed to know the truth. The next day, she sought out the elders of the village, the last living witnesses of the place's past. In a small wooden house scented with herbal tea and wood smoke, an old woman named Margaret listened quietly as Emily mentioned Lucy's name. After a long, heavy silence, Margaret finally spoke, her voice raspy, like it was carried on the wind. "Lucy, she was a sweet little girl. About 8 years old, she once lived in the very house you're staying in now. She had a small white cat that followed her everywhere, never leaving her side. But one day, Lucy disappeared. The villagers searched the entire town, combed the forest, went down to the river, but there was no trace of her. Only the cat came back days later, a red mark around its neck like something had strangled it, crying endlessly at the door of the old house. After that, it vanished too. No one ever truly knew what happened." Emily sat frozen. The story explained everything. The scar around the cat's neck, the pain in its eyes, the forgotten grave hidden deep in the woods. But what chilled her was the silence that had followed for decades. A small, innocent soul had vanished, and time had buried the grief so deeply that no one spoke of it anymore, except for one loyal cat that never forgot. That afternoon, Emily returned to the grave. The cat walked beside her, no longer hesitant as before, as if it understood that at last, someone was ready to hear its story. The sky was heavy with thick gray clouds, a storm looming on the horizon, but neither of them stopped. When they arrived, Emily knelt by the stone marker, her hands trembling as she brushed away dead leaves and dirt, revealing the weathered, faded letters. She whispered softly, as if speaking to the soul of the little girl who once had lived there. "Lucy, you are not forgotten anymore. Someone remembers you. Someone has been waiting for you to come home." The cat curled up in Emily's arms, nudging her hand with its head, and in that moment, both of them wept, a small creature that had carried silent pain for so many years, and a young woman who felt the weight of a loss as though she herself had misplaced something precious. No words were needed, no shared language was required. They understood one another more deeply than anything else in the world. Emily knew she could not change the past, but there was one thing she could do: give Lucy and her little friend the peace they deserved. The next day, she returned with wildflowers, carefully righted the tilted gravestone, scraped away moss and rotting leaves, and placed the flowers by the grave. She lit a small candle, letting its soft golden glow chase away decades of cold and silence. The cat sat beside her, its blue eyes no longer filled only with pain, but now glimmering with a quiet warmth, a wordless thank you from the depths of its tiny heart. From that day on, Emily officially adopted the cat, giving it a new name, Whisper. She believed that every soft, trembling meow it made was not just a sound of loneliness, but a message from Lucy herself, reaching out from somewhere far away, searching for a heart willing to listen. Whisper was no longer a wandering ghost. It had a home now, a pair of arms to keep it safe each night, and a friend who would carry the burden of its sorrow alongside it. One evening, as the sun sank low, Emily sat by Lucy's grave with Whisper nestled in her lap. Together, they listened to the wind rustling through the trees. No words were spoken, but they both knew something sacred had happened, a connection that transcended the boundary between animal and human, between life and death, between past and present, a bond written in patience, kindness, and a memory that refused to fade. Chapter 5. A full year had passed since the day Emily and Whisper discovered Lucy's grave. The forest behind the house had cycled through all 4 seasons. Spring cloaked it in fresh green buds. Summer drenched it in the fragrance of blooming flowers. Autumn painted it gold with layers of fallen leaves, and winter tucked it beneath a thin blanket of snow. Yet one thing remained unchanged, the small clearing at the edge of the woods. Once a silent resting place for sorrow long buried, it had now become a living memory, cherished as part of the village's history. Emily tended to the grave as if it were a small garden. She built a wooden fence around it, planting white daisies and purple lavender by the stone marker. Each morning, with dew still glistening on the petals, Whisper would circle the spot, marking each corner of the earth as though to say, "This is ours, this is proof of a friendship that death could not erase." And in the golden light of evening, Emily would place a fresh flower on the grave, whispering to Lucy, telling her about the quiet, happy days that Whisper had finally been able to enjoy. Word of Lucy's story and the loyal cat who never forgot her spread throughout the village. The elders told the tale to the children as a lesson in loyalty and compassion. Visitors from neighboring towns came to see the grave, leaving small toys, delicate flowers, even a few sweet cookies said to be Lucy's favorite. The grave was no longer a cold, forgotten place. It had become a gathering spot for kind hearts, where a sorrowful memory was slowly healed by the warmth of a caring community. Emily and Whisper had grown inseparable, whether in stormy weather or under brilliant blue skies. They walked side by side. Whisper's eyes no longer held that lost, haunted look Emily remembered from their first meeting. Instead, they now shone with a gentle peace, the glow of a soul that had finally found where it belonged. And Emily, thanks to Whisper, had learned how to open her heart wider to the pain of others, to stories long buried, to the truths that needed someone willing to listen. One autumn afternoon, a soft breeze drifted through the yard, scattering golden leaves around the porch steps. Emily sat on the wooden stairs, Whisper curled across her shoulder, both of them gazing toward the forest where the setting sun bathed the trees in a warm, crimson light. The rustling of the leaves sounded like Lucy's voice, a tender whisper from far away, saying thank you for not letting her or her tiny friend be forgotten. And in that quiet moment, Emily understood something profound. Love never truly disappears. It only waits for a gentle heart to rekindle its light, even after long, lonely years of silence and loss. Chapter 6. Night fell softly over the quiet village by the forest. Moonlight streamed through the branches, scattering a silvery glow across the small grave, as if a gentle hand were caressing a memory from long ago. Around the weathered stone that bore the words, "For Lucy, my little angel," fresh white flowers bloomed, their petals glowing softly under the moon. Paper lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, flickering like fallen stars keeping watch over the slumber of a little soul. Emily sat nearby, Whisper curled up in her lap. The steady rhythm of the cat's breathing carried a peace that had once seemed impossible. Gone were the trembling whimpers, the desperate cries of a creature begging to be saved. As Emily ran her fingers gently through the cat's now soft fur, she could feel its tiny heartbeat, a heart that had wandered through long, lonely nights, now safely wrapped in the love it had been searching for all along. In that stillness, a thought rose deep within Emily's mind, like a voice carried on the wind, as though it came from the heart of the forest, from Lucy's spirit, from Whisper itself. Sometimes, love and loyalty reach beyond time and even death. A small soul, lost in this world, needs only a kind heart to listen, to comfort, to bring it home. When we open our hearts to animals, we do not just save them, we heal ourselves, too. Emily looked up at the star-filled sky, a strange feeling blooming in her chest, a farewell and a promise. All at once, she knew Lucy had found peace because of Whisper, and Whisper had found a home because of her. The delicate thread connecting human and animal, the living and the departed, had woven a quiet miracle that time could never undo. A breeze rustled through the clearing, and the paper lanterns around the grave flickered gently, as if responding to an unspoken thank you from beyond. Emily held Whisper a little closer, whispering softly, "We will always remember her, always." And in that fleeting moment, it felt as though the entire village, the forest, and the starry sky above bowed together in reverence to a small story, a story powerful enough to stir even the most silent, long-forgotten hearts.